Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Xantho here, and this is going to be a demonstration for some weird tech that I've been thinking about for the last 2 months. It combines Lethe Shade, over-sustained to monoflasks, automation plus RF, and a monoflask with remove burning when used. So the idea here is that Lethe Shade makes you take 50% less damage over time if you start taking damage over time in the past second. So this really helps for like ground degen pools, mono siphoner, rares that you just get clipped by for a little second, shaper beams for the first second of you taking the damage over time. However, you can stand in shaper beams if you have this setup, even if you couldn't before. Now the idea here is automation plus RF. So you turn it on, start degenning. And I'm still degenning. However, when I hit my monoflask, for 1 second, I take 50% less damage over time. Then you can turn off your RF automation and douse it and stop using RF. So if I turn RF on again, I degen. I turn my life flask on, I still degen because it's a shitty life flask. I purposely picked a shitty life flask so it's still degen. So let's douse that. Bring us back up. So we degen with the life flask and RF up. However, we do not degen when we hit our monoflask. Now you'll stop taking RF damage entirely, which means you're going to stop degenning, completely. But then for 1 second, you'll actually regen. In this case, regen, but you should be able to. In a perfect scenario, you would be sustaining Righteous Fire without this tech. And this would just be a bunch of extra less damage over time taken for stuff like Shaper Beams and such. But once again, I am degening with Life Flask. Hit Monoflask, I regen for 1 second. Hit Monoflask, I regen for 1 second. That's because I stop taking RF damage, but that's not what Lethe Shade does. It's when you start taking damage over time. So when automation kicks in and makes you turns on the RF again, that makes you start taking damage over time. And then damage over time then kicks in Lethe Shade, which makes you take 50% less damage over time. So RF degens you half as much. And this works for any degen in the game. Once again, if you over sustain Righteous Fire, that's the best case scenario, like an actual RF build, or a build that uses RF as like additional damage, like a spellcaster build, like an Inquisitor or something. An Inquisitor Tides of Time, you could do that. There are some monoflask nodes here for charges gained, and then there's the mastery for monoflask gain 1 charge. You probably could swoop down here for this one down here, monoflask gain 1 charge, so you could get like 5, 10% flask charges gained, 25%, so what is that? 45% flask charges gained, and then 1 monoflask charge gain, and then another monoflask charge gain. So you probably could sustain with a 3 roll of Tides of Time and that setup, which an Inquisitor can do, a Chieftain could do, a Juggernaut could do. These aren't too far from the starting of Marauder and Templar. So once again, degenning with Life Flask up, regenning with Monoflask because I've started taking damage recently. And I go back to full. So Life Flask kicks off, still degenning with Life Flask on, regen. Now let's turn off RF, douse our RF with the flask, and we are good. So with this technology, it would be kind of hard to get Inquisitor. Actually, you could get Inquisitor over here, Templar over here. I mean, it's not that far. This Essence Extraction's right here, then Lethe Shade's just right here. You want to probably pick up Pain Attunement and just swoop down here for Lethe Shade. Or you could use the Skin of the Lords, But Lethe Shade has some really cool utility that I think is underutilized, and that is with RF automation plus over-sustained monoflask with remove burning. So that's basically it. Cool little tech. I think I'm gonna make some sort of build with it. And with that, peace out, you guys.